Welcome back, everyone. There has been an ongoing clamor that the only way to reform the NPF is to embark on a major constitution amendment with the sole aim of deregulating policing. Those who make this argument insist that to leave the NPF on an exclusive list and therefore entirely in the hands of the federal government ignores the fact that the challenges of policing are so huge and diverse that only one arm of government, regardless of the amount of powers and resources at its disposal, could effectively handle. A corollary to this argument is that by deregulating policing, other tiers of government, such as the state and local governments, would be in a better position to maintain and exercise direct control over the police within their respective jurisdiction. Tonight, let's speak with a professor of history. He teaches history, but is also a researcher into the history of the police and policing in Nigeria. He served as advisor to the Honorable Minister of Police Affairs, August 2004 to January 2005, on the Police Performance Monitoring Unit. Professor Olukemi Rotimi is my guest. Welcome to the program, Prof. Thank you so much for joining us on this very important conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Right. So I see that you've done extensive research work on policing in Nigeria. I stumbled on one of your documents titled Approaches to the Policing of a Perplexed Society, Effective Policing Strategies for Nigeria. Quite amazing that you have done so much work in this regard. So let's start with modern-day policing in Nigeria. Are we getting it right? And what is your idea of a standard police force?
My idea of a standard police force, is there a standard police force? What the citizens need is protection of lives and property, the apprehension of criminals. As a matter of fact, let's state it clearly. The primary duty of the police is to prevent crime. But then when that does not happen, you apprehend the criminal and bring him or her to justice. The other leg of police duty is the maintenance of law and order. In many third world countries, the skewing of the role of the police has been more weighted on the maintenance of law and order thing, which makes them suffer this characterization as organizations meant to protect regimes. That's not quite correct, but that's what the citizens think, or the way they view the police. Standard police force, I don't know what that means. Efficient police force, or reasonably efficient police force, is an ambition worth well pursuing. Well worth pursuing.
All right, Prof. Talking about efficiency, is the Nigeria police still capable of delivering efficient security under the present structure? And I'm asking that question because at the time you had said the problem with policing in Nigeria is regime maintenance. Is that still the case?
When the British went out to govern, they went with two philosophies of policing. One, for strangers to police strangers. The other, likes to police likes. That bit about strangers policing strangers is the one that undergirds the founding of colonial police forces, because they were as good as being an arm of government meant to bring the discontented, formerly independent groups of people under colonial control. And for resisting the imposition of colonial rule, they were badgered into submission. And in many of the documents you find the police going out on pacification raids. Pacifying who? For what? Now, that stranger policing, stranger orientation, what it means is that you deploy police to areas where they are really not indigenous to. So when it comes to the duty of maintaining law and order, of bringing or forcing people to comply with what government desires, there is not too much sentiment. But the other philosophy, which was likes to police likes, was what undergirded the transformation of pre-existing police institutions in pre-colonial centralized state systems, adapting them to colonial purpose. That was that informed the transformation of the human beings in the palaces of kings, whether in the northern or in the western parts of Nigeria, into police organizations, what I call from palace officials to stipendiary agents of state. Now, that's the bit of policing that is missing in the deployment or the composition of the Nigeria Police Force. When you recruit people like in the NA police days from within the communities, they're fairly conversant with their circumstances. Every community has its crime families, and when things happen, offenses are committed, the police dictate to go after the criminals, don't gamble with possible locations or who might have done it. They zero in on the criminal families and start from there. But that is because they have local knowledge. That's what the members of the Nigeria Police Force lack. But when I say this, it does not detract from the quality of service that members of the Nigeria Police Force give. From colonial times even up to now, you still have among them those who are dedicated, committed to doing their duties, and can be quite efficient when the circumstances are right.
But Prof, during the colonial period, most police were associated with local government, otherwise known as native authorities. However, in the 1960s, during the First Republic, these forces were first regionalized and then nationalized. Do you think they should have stayed regionalized?
You have mixed it all up.
Okay.
The native authority stroke local government police forces came into being quite early in colonial times. As I've explained, they were adapted from pre-existing institutions which had existed in the palaces of kings in centralized states or centralized state systems. That is, in the Emirates of Northern Nigeria or the chiefdoms or kingdoms of Western Nigeria, where you have this structured arrangement, a king at the apex, chiefs, palace officials. When the British came, they saw those things in place and then adapted those institutions. Talking about these pre-existing officials in southwest Nigeria, you have a multiplicity of names depending on where you are located. You have the Lari in the Oyo Kingdom. In eastern Yoruba land, MSA, Modiawa, in Ijebu, Agure. But in northern Nigeria, in the Muslim parts, they have this name Dogari, singular, Dogari, plural. These were the bodies of men that the British, in the immediate, adapted for colonial purposes by taking some of them to constitute the nucleus of what later grew to be stipendiary officers of government, now carrying the label Native Authority Police. So there was not a question of independent. No. There had been existence from quite early in colonial times. What happened after 1966 was the abolition. That is, following the collapse of the First Republic, because there had been so much noise made with some justification about the misuse of the Native Authority Police, either in the north or local police in the west. There was this clamor, they should be abolished, integrated with Nigeria Police Force. But any close reading of the Gobi report will show that the committee did identify that even within the Nigeria Police Force, then there were challenges, there were issues. But the preponderance was on the quote and unquote misuse of the Native Authority and local government police forces. And let me say this, in northern Nigeria, the entirety of the northern region, the better known police, but especially in the Emirates, was the Native Authority Police. There was a very thin presence of Nigeria Police Force, Nigeria Police personnel in much of northern Nigeria pre-1966. So that was why when the noise went out and the opposition in northern Nigeria had a much harder time operating than they had in the western region. If you notice that I've been talking as if there were only 2 regions, no. There were 3 initially, before 1963. The eastern region, the British did not allow the constitution of Native Authority Police because of the initial difficulty in identifying authority structure. Not that people of eastern Nigeria didn't govern themselves before colonial rule, but not in the manner in which you could very easily identify authority structure in the more centralized state systems of the western and northern regions.
Interesting. But Prof, with a population exceeding 220 million and a police to citizen ratio of 1 to 650, far below the UN recommended 1 to 450, the demand for reform has reached a critical juncture. Decentralizing law enforcement through state police is no longer a matter of debate, but an urgent necessity. And majority of state governors have supported the need for establishment of state police. Do you see this as a cause for jubilation or caution in the country?
Well, because of the difficulty with the kind of technology TVC is using to conduct this interview, the voice faded off towards the end, but I heard it clearly. And if I may reframe, you're asking me if the quantum of personnel that we have now can be said to be adequate for the population. The answer is in the question, no. As a matter of fact, for us to have anything close to...
Prof, that was not the question.
What?
I'm talking about... that was not the question. My question was based on the fact that just a week ago, majority of state governors have supported the need for establishment of state police. So I said, do you see this as a cause for jubilation or caution in the country?
Yes, as I said, your voice faded off, so I picked the first part of it. When you say the governors supported it in and then cause of jubilation, well, the times are changing. The pressure to have police deregulated in Nigeria has been on before now. As a matter of fact, many Nigerians may not know this. The first kite of deregulating policing was flown in the early years of this republic, that is, under President Obasanjo. His Minister of Information then, Dapo Sarumi, announced it, but it didn't gain traction, and it faded off. Coming around to it now, I have an explanation. One, the man who is now president of Nigeria has experimented with deregulating policing in Lagos when he constituted the Neighborhood Watch, which has not been transformed into the Lagos State Network, Security Network, or whatever, core. That has been transformed into a core. So people are keen in now because the menace of banditry, kidnapping, name it, and then the poor number of Nigeria police personnel and the quantity of support that state governors have given here and there will seem to show that, okay, rather than be supporting the Nigeria police force, why don't you go the whole hog of owning police? And I must confess, I'm one of the excited ones because it will eliminate these bodies of human beings, non-state actors they call them, masquerading or parading as police and at times even contesting space with the Nigeria police members. Not quite healthy. So going this route is to be expected and doesn't come as a surprise because President Bola Tinubu, and many may not know it, I see it as an extension of this whole thing about local government autonomy so that people can hold those who govern us more accountable at lower levels of governance other than the federal central one. And most of the time, people just do the shouting about the inadequacies of the federal government, leaving the man who is tyrannizing them very close by to have his fun. So the seeming excitement, and I do not know how you did your survey to know that they're excited. You, at some point the other day, the National Economic Council, which seems to be the body coordinating this new order, talked about 3 or 4 state governments that had not made their submissions. I'm not even sure that even as I sit here in your studio discussing this issue, that those state governments have actually submitted. But they got a deadline, and the Office of the Vice President, which is coordinating the NEC affairs, is proceeding. But it would appear that most state governors are now persuaded that is the way to go. And let me refer to what I said earlier, where President Obama just first flew the kite. Part of the reason the thing didn't even gain traction, there was too much north-south dichotomy at that time. And the thing is just easing now, which for me means that we're making progress, albeit slowly, in this matter of democratic governance. We're making progress.
All right. You know, the governors are to continue with meetings to come up with a report. How soon should this take in the face of daunting security challenges in the country?
You have to repeat that question because of this difficulty with
Prof, did you hear me?
Technology.
So the governors are to continue. Right, the governors are to continue with meetings to come up with a report. So I'm asking, how soon should this take in the face of daunting security challenges in the country?
Now, there's a problem with democracy. You cannot do things in a hurry. And most of the time, if you really want to achieve results, you need a lot of wooing, cajoling, at times literally begging your fellow human being to see the road. The next meeting is in January. At that meeting, the best that they may achieve may be just, okay, finally we have reports from those states that had yet to submit their report, and then they distribute the report, and then they start work. Because this is the end of the year, the country has been shut down, and I don't think many people are going to do anything between now and mid-January. So what we can say at this point is that finally the recreation of policing at levels other than the central government is here to stay, or is about to come on again. That gives some hope. And when it will happen, we may not be too much in a hurry to achieve it. But if most of the state governors have agreed to be involved, it may be much faster than we think. For instance, before now, we are aware of various state governments constituting all kinds of organizations or bodies with all kinds of labels, some very amusing, Amotekun, Ebubeagu, all kinds of names, and uniforms that are very amusing to view, but some really living it up, but they cannot carry arms, which would seem to be their limitation. And let's get it right. Part of the gain that will come from properly now constituting state police is that the issue of arms bearing will be off. They definitely will carry arms. Because it doesn't make sense, really, engaging anybody at this time without that opportunity to carry arms. Because when the Native Authority Police and local police forces existed, yes, they did not bear arms, but that was not for all times. At some point, some caliber of officers were allowed, but largely they were without arms. And that was because society was much simpler, and the tendency, the believability in government, or the fact that these are our people, was much higher. That is not there now. And the criminals that exist now carry AK-47. So why will you send an Amotekun into the thick bush somewhere in Ondo State, where I come from, and all that he has as his charms and amulets? By the time good AK-47 fire is those charms, the man is dead alive. So, as they say, Okula Lejanta. So now, with state police properly constituted, those who served or who will serve will bear arms. And once that challenge is removed, it then follows that it will be much easier to combat the criminal. Because what he is carrying, you're also carrying. And maybe yours may be superior to his. So that could be a game changer.
All right. But Prof, considering some provisions in the Police Act and other regulations, what do you think should be done to ensure a smooth transition to state policing in the country? Not forgetting that amendments of the Nigeria Police Act to accommodate state police would take 2 years.
Once the agreement is there in principle, and most states, because you don't need all of the states to agree to this change, to amend that section of the Constitution that says there shall be only one police organization. Once the majority carries the day, the law that will govern state police in various states, those laws don't have to be uniform. There are a few basics. After all, the Amotekun, the Bubego, or whatever now, there are laws governing their existence, just need some tweaking. So there should be no big deal about crafting the laws that will govern the existence of state police forces. And they don't have to be copycats. You really don't have to dub the Nigeria Police Act the way the Obasanjo government did in creating NSCDC and making them more provided for, even in terms of accoutrement, than members of Nigeria Police Force. You don't need that direct copying. You can borrow elements of what they contain and then shop for ideas. But creating the enabling law cannot be an issue. It doesn't have to delay the implementation. Whoever is vacillating because you are yet to pass the law is just wasting time and showing that he may have involuntarily complied or flowed along with the others without really meaning it. Whoever means it will do it. And I'm not from Lagos, but I can campaign for why the Lagos safety, whatever call, could be the ideal thing to look at and then just adapt for the various states. The crime is crime anywhere. The quantum and the degree and the severity may differ.
Prof, let's take a break, and when we come back, we will continue this conversation. Please stay with us, everyone. Thank you very much for staying with us, everyone. Tonight, we're discussing the push for state police, and I've been speaking with Professor Olukemi Rotimi, a professor of history. Prof, thank you very much for staying with us on the program. Two questions as we move on quickly. Do you think we're right for state police within the current constitutional arrangement? And I'm asking because, I've spoken with former IGP Michael Kiro, who said to me that state policing won't work. And according to him, federal oversight, independent review boards, and clear legislative frameworks are essential to prevent misuse of power. Even the current IGP, Kade Egbetokun, is against it. And most of them have said we should go for regional policing. But some Nigerians have also said the IGPs are scared, afraid of the decentralization of their powers, that they may lose their influence. So this fear that some governors may use such police outfits against perceived enemies remains. Other stakeholders have also said the benefit inherent in this outfit outweighs these concerns. But how do you think this should be addressed?
Well, you spoke with two IGs, one retired, one serving. I've spoken with 7. Do the arithmetic. Yes. Now, very rarely do serving or retired police officers get amused by the loss of their monopoly on police powers and influence. So, whatever reservations the two you have spoken with have expressed do not come as a surprise. But I know Mr. Okiro much more intimately than you do. But it's not, whatever reservation he has expressed doesn't necessarily detract from the beauty of owning state police. Now, you lumped a few things together, but I'll help you disentangle, because I know where you are headed. This whole thing about police being misused by owner governors to tyrannize opponents. Well, if only you had got a copy of my book before this interaction, knowing you as I do, you would have read the book and may have been able to shape your question better. Under any dispensation, the tendency to use agents of government with responsibility for enforcing laws, the tendency has always been very high. And in the matter of policing, no less. Because policing, as I like to put it very simply, is about investing one man with state authority to affect the freedom of another. I repeat, policing is about investing one man with state authority to affect the freedom of another. Even when you are looking at policing to be primarily for crime control, the criminal does not want his freedom to be abridged. He has exercised his freedom to commit a crime, but the police has apprehended him. That apprehension, he doesn't like it. But the policeman is the only person who can do it. And that's what many people do not know. As I'm sitting comfortably in your studio, if I step out of this studio and a constable or corporal approaches me, Professor, good evening. I've been requested to invite you to Metama Police Station. If he's properly identified, I'm expected to oblige and follow him to the station because he is not the one who has sent himself. He has been directed to pull me in. And oftentimes the negotiation about what is it, what did your guy say that, why did your guy send you to pick me, and all that. So the thing is about misusing police is a risky business. The police owe loyalty to governments of the day, anywhere in the world. Anywhere in the world, I repeat, loyalty to governments of the day. But many confuse that into mean loyalty to incumbent political power holders. Not quite so. And the risk involved in misusing the police is that, especially now under our current arrangement, if you're in the executive, you have term limitation. You'll be governor for 8 years. because let's get to where we're headed. It's about governors and misuse of police. After 8 years, you step down. If you misuse the police, you have only one prayer to say, that on the day you are handing over, something just happens and you go to be with the Lord. Otherwise, all that you have used the police to achieve in terms of tyrannizing your opponents could be applied, could happen to you. And if we just pause to consider the governors who have not been able to visit their home states after stepping down, you will know what it means. Don't misuse the police, because the loyalty they showed you while you were in office was not necessarily because of your person. That's an obligation imposed on them by law. And my 3 famous examples, which I'll quickly rush through, in the First Republic, Soji Odunjo, Akiomo Boreo, Afolabi, SM, were AG sympathizers. Omoboro was president of the student union government in Ibadan, UI, when the police invaded UI in late 65, while the Western Nigeria crisis was on. It wasn't even the local government police that invaded UI, it was the NPF. The damage they did with that invasion was quite massive and embarrassing. I still saw the records in the Rose House Library in Britain in the course of research some years back. But it was widely reported. Now, in the case of Odunjo and Afolabi, there are challenges. In the Second Republic, these 3 men, Soji Odunjo in Ogun, Afolabi in Oyo, and Omoboro in Odo State, wanted to succeed their governors, their incumbent governors there, even after only 1 term, and it degenerated a serious crisis. They moved from the UPN to the MPN. At that time, the police that were given to them by the MPN were protecting law, were defending law and order. In the First Republic, those policemen were thugs in uniform. So one man's policeman could be another man's thug, depending on the circumstances. What am I saying in summary? If you have the privilege of owning police and directing them to do their duties, do not misuse them against your political opponents, because politics is a very slippery slope, you know, and we have seen some people cross from one party to another too many times. Because if you misuse the police owe loyalty to governments of the day. Not
I get that, Prof. I get that, but if being abused is the problem many have with the creation of state police, are you saying there is no way we can insulate the police from abuse?
You make it look like it is only state police that can be abused. You're an adult Nigerian. Between 1999 and 2024, have members of the Nigeria Police Force not been misused, if you want to use that word now, I hesitate to do so, against political opponents in this country? I mean, we don't have enough time for me to give you examples, but go check the newspapers and online, offline, and you'll see the plethora of cases of police being misused by political power holders at a given point against their opponents. The longest chapter in my book is chapter 5, Police and Politics. It contains this twin issue of why do politicians solicit police support in government? Why do the police oblige? So, but we cannot elaborate in a 1-hour interview.
Absolutely.
It is not, what I'm saying that it is not only the state governors that can misuse police. The federal government, since 1999, there have been occasions where people can clearly see that the federal government was misusing the police against their opponents, whether within the state or elsewhere.
All right, Prof, let's talk about funding. Do you agree with those who have said state police should be optional because some states may have funding issues?
No state has any funding issue. The support that various state governments have given and are still giving to the Nigeria Police Force now It's probably the reason President Tinubu, knowing his antecedents in Lagos, has decided, look, let's go the whole hog. And with the creation of Amotekun and this other outfits the other day, have they been running on water? If state resources are properly managed, there is no significant institution like the police that can guarantee better living for the citizenry that you cannot fund. What is this funding thing about? How is Lagos able to support the federal police, yet maintain the LNSC that they now have? This thing about Security Trust Fund, Lagos experimented or started it, and they've done it very clinically, efficiently well. But alongside that, they have considered the LNSC, and both are doing well. So what's this thing about funding? That's part of the beauty of what the president is doing with this local government autonomy. And those who have ears, let them listen. The Attorney General has been literally begging now, conniving officials of government against, don't oblige your governors any attempt to circuit the Supreme Court judgment. Your governor has immunity for now. In your own case, you are apprehended, you go to jail now. Your governor, when his immunity is gone, we have his day in court, as we are now witnessing in the case of one governor like that. Who, after all the hide and seek, now finally is having his day in court. The funding thing, where there is a will, to summarize, there will be a way. If you have constituted police and you do not fund the organization well, you have merely given guns to armed robbers, uniformed armed robbers, licensed armed robbers. Why won't you pay them? But let me say this, that this issue of the welfare of the police, but especially the challenge of superior officers mismanaging the lives and well-being of their junior ones, is an age-old problem, which must be addressed. IGP Ringim almost wrote his name in gold in 2010 upon assuming office, when he literally broadcast the twin challenges of inadequate pay and delayed payment as being the problem dogging the Nigeria police force. Shortly after, pay officers in the Ondo, Imo, and the Lagos commands were apprehended. They were brought to Abuja from where I'm speaking now and docked. After one or two appearances, the case just faded off. My educated guess is that some other officers retired of serving went to ring him, "You are going to spoil this business. Things have always been done this way. So what's your problem?" And the man relented. Well, thank God the Boko Haram menace came when they invaded force headquarters, and President Jonathan didn't have a chance to relieve him of.
Maybe we should round off with that, Prof. Prof, maybe we should round off with that, because in one of your books, you said, and I quote, "It needs to be stressed that there is a huge chronic disparity in the welfare provisions for the officers class and the non-commissioned ranks. I dare say that until the gulf is substantially bridged between these two groups, not much may be achieved in desired service delivery, especially bearing in mind that the policing that touches the lives of the generality of citizens is done by members of the non-commissioned ranks." End of quote. I mean, this is you advocating for full and timely payment of their salaries, which would, I mean, have great impact on their performances. Is there still an issue, Prof?
I maintain what you have read, that's in my inaugural lecture. That point, I reiterate it, and I will sing songs with you forever. Unless the welfare gap between the officer class and the other ranks in the Nigeria Police Force, and by extension, any force that may be created is significantly bridged, will not get the police service that we deserve, because the Yoruba say, "Inudidun lo moriya," and let nobody kid. You are shortchanging, short-paying, and delaying the payment of your men. They are aware of what you are doing, and they react. And the way they react, because policing is a very risky, funny organization. He has come to your office, "Morning, sir," saluted you. By the time he bangs that door, and then expletives. Treat them well, and they'll
back
perform.
On the program. We may need to bring you back on the program because there are a lot of angles we could not cover tonight. Thank you so much, Prof.
Yes.
It's a pleasure speaking with you tonight. I've been speaking with Professor Olukemi Rotimi, a professor of history. He has a focus on the push for state police. Thank you so much, Prof. It's a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much.
Pleasure is mine.
Thank you very much for watching, everyone. That's our package tonight. Please have a great weekend. Good night, everyone.